everyone, and welcome to Beginnings, the show that asks, where do creative people come from? My name is Andy. I'm the host of the show and a writer and performer based in Los Angeles, California. How is everyone doing this week when once again, almost getting old hat at this point, once again, we cross another line into just straight up, absolute, all-encompassing fascism as Kansas demands that all its trans citizens hand in their driver's licenses. So, we're really here in Niemöller poem territory. Is that his name, Niemöller? First they came for whoever, and I did jack shit. Well, it's time to not do jack shit. At the very least, you should be putting your money where your mouth is. I know the Transcontinental Pipeline I'm not sure if they're overwhelmed with donations at the moment. There's there's a little pop-up on their website that says that they have gotten a recent influx of a lot of money and they are training people. I don't know if they could use more or if there's other places where there are maybe some underfunded places that are helping trans Kansans. But this is the very least we should all be doing at this point. Anyway, I know that's not the most fun way to start a podcast, but shit is getting super real. It was always real, but I would say for even the people out there who were trying to live in denial, I think that's becoming pretty impossible. So anyway, great episode today. This is I was about to say old friend. And I think at this point, we've been friends for years now. I can say that. But today I'm talking to Mort Burke. And if you don't know who Mort is, I'm going to read you his bio right now. Originally from St. Louis, comedian and actor Mort Burke came up in the Chicago comedy scene before moving to Los Angeles. He's acted on everything from Bunheads to Workaholics to Mythic Quest, recurred on The Mindy Project, wrote and acted in With Bob and David, and was a regular on both Enlisted and Drunk History. He also hosts the podcast Rebrand with his brilliant wife Ashley Birch, and is writing a novel in installments on his Substack, which I can call Dickensian in the only positive use of that word, in the sense that it's written in installments. As a comedian, Mort has released 2 specials, his first, Spiritually Filthy, in 2023, and his latest, There's Beauty in It All, which just came out last week, and much like everything Mort does, it's a delight. Mort and I have very similar senses of humor. We have very similar senses of humor, and at the same time, very different worldviews. So it's always a delight to talk to Mort, because we can dip in and out of saying very serious things about spirituality, about global finance, and then dive into some very silly Billy territory, and then back out again. It's the exact kind of tone that I seek in life at all times, and so it's truly heartening to find another human that has that same kind of dialectic in their heart. Is that the word I want? Sure, let's go with it. Dialectic in their heart. So yeah, we get into it. We get into Mort's, I think he uses the word dysfunctional childhood, but we also get into, hey, guys, this episode has a lot of heart, but also a lot of laughs. Jesus Christ. Anyway, I love Mort. He's great. I hope you like this episode, because it was a blast to talk to him and hang out for 90 minutes. Yes, folks. I had so much fun talking to Mort, we blew past the hour. All right, before we get to the episode, though, I just want to give you a taste of some episodes that are coming up. A little preview. First, we got Julia Steiner of the Rap Boys. That was fantastic. John Flansburgh from They Might Be Giants. Amelia Fletcher of Heavenly. These were all fantastic talks. I can't wait for you to hear them. So stay tuned. But for now, let's talk to Mort.
I hear that. I like you're taking it's a hill you're willing to perish on, and I think that's fair.
I'm not willing to perish on it. if my livelihood depended on it, I would 100% switch in 1 second, but it doesn't at the moment.
I was just inferring from the seriousness of your tone that it was a very serious sticking point for you.
No, it's not. I think this is my problem with the pivot to video podcasts is that it stinks of the same thing that Facebook tried forcing on everyone based on fraudulent data, I would say about 10 years ago. They ruined plenty of sites that were viable, that were like good, not just viable as in like financially viable, but a lot of sites that were actually interesting sites that were like, well, I guess we have to pivot to video because Facebook says we do. But they based it all on fraudulent data and then ruined those places, right? So it stinks of that. And the other thing it stinks of is that constantly tech companies are trying to find labor loopholes in Hollywood in order to exploit, right? That was the whole move to streaming was, oh, well, we don't have to pay them as much as there's nothing in any of the WGA or SAG contracts or anything that says we have to pay them the same way. And they don't. The residuals are shit compared to what you get for network stuff. So the pivot to video stuff and the fact that Netflix and Hulu and all these places are now trying to get video podcasts, and look, to my friends who have done it, God bless them, get that money. All right. But it is a labor loophole. It is a way of making a non-union talk show that looks like shit in like 98% of the cases.
Yeah.
Like it is like half of them don't even have the cool, interesting camera angles of Club Random.
Right. Everybody's North Star.
That's what when I think of comedy, when I think of artistic camera work in comedy, I think of Bill Maher.
Yeah, nuanced, sober conversation, I think. I love watching 70-year-olds party. Nothing makes me happier than when a 70-year-old white has clearly just done some cocaine and it's like thinks it's cool to get blunted.
Some cocaine.
Yeah. Well, before I think he doesn't go nuts till after the podcast. I think that's my
okay.
Anyway.
Yeah,
I think it's true, man. The reality is that it's interesting because we're similar ages, I think. And there was like this last gasp with the Gen Xers of being like, don't sell out, which became sort of a joke. But what I think was around that was the last understanding of like, oh, we can have experiences that are not corporatized in some capacity. Like, that's what I'm realizing I love about skateboarding is it was one of the last few things that you could engage in and have basically nothing to do with any corporations. Like a whole series of things built for this culture that were created by like independently owned companies of varying sizes and shit. And then now with the push to honestly, you have to admire in a way the tenacity and the imagination to commodify our consciousness. I think that shows a real kind of forward thinking to be able to be like, so we can't be surprised when all of these foundationally corporate entities are doing everything they could possibly do to screw us for any amount of money that we might receive.
It's funny when you said consciousness. At first, my brain was going like, "This Ollie is brought to you by Raytheon," but then, like I was thinking of like all the ways that like skateboarding. But now I'm like, "This whim has been brought to you by Lockheed Martin," or or like this passing fancy has been brought to you by the Rand Corporation.
Yeah, Nabisco presents a specific dream you had.
Yeah, I think, I talk about this. I know you've heard the show before. I don't know how often, but like I talk about how I was on the cusp because I'm like millennial Gen X cusp. And I fit mostly in with millennial, except for this one thing, which is I was told not to sell out, that the worst fucking thing you could do in the world was selling out. Don't do it. And now we live in a world where literally that's not only is that ethos dead, not even buried, like dead and thrown off the side of a truck into a ravine to rot. Right.
Yeah, it's an old skeleton. Yeah, for sure.
just bleached in the sun. Mm-hmm. Not only is it that, but it's also that the complete opposite has become de rigueur for everyone. And I'm like, it feels so fucking lost.
It's because what Gen X kind of foresaw happened. And I think that's because one funny thing about Gen X is that all the generations supposedly have their symptoms, right? And all the Gen X symptoms are just symptoms of neglect. That's entirely it. Where it's like, yeah, they're like posture's bad. They love hard guitars and they don't like to be touched. It's like, yeah, because no one was around. Like they didn't receive hugs. And so I think there was something about that. They sort of intuited this strange phenomenon that like, I'm postulating here, but that maybe they were like, our parents, if they could, they'd do everything they can to exploit this culture in any capacity. That's probably not ultimately good, but they weren't. Not enough people sort of saw the problem with selling out, and when enough people don't see it, and you exist in capitalism is going to capitalist, right? So it is just Monopoly, the game, which is was created as an anti-capitalist board game, which is fucking tremendous. And what happens in Monopoly is what is happening now, where all the money is by one person, and then everyone else just silently disappears. And the interesting thing about it is that is inevitable, right? That is, capitalism is unsustainable by your government is going to be owned by corporations. That is inevitable. You are fucking bailing water on the Titanic if you try to stop it in capitalism, until capitalism starts to break down and enough people start to truly suffer. So that's what we're seeing now, is like this inevitability. I'm not one of these like, let's burn it all down. What do they call it? There's a name for that.
Accelerationists?
Yeah, I'm not an accelerationist, but I do believe that these things that we're experiencing are an inevitable consequence.
Yeah, I mean, they are, for sure, if you look at any kind of Marxist theory. The thing is with accelerationists, the thing why I don't like them is that they assume that there's some kind of scientific accuracy to Marxism, and that when this degrades, it will go into socialism, communism, as opposed to there's no necessity. It's probably going into fascism unless there's enough of a countervailing force. And I don't see any actual revolutionary force in America that can oppose what's happening at the moment in this timeline. But
this is why your podcast is always rated number one most fun podcast in the lists, in the fun podcast lists. Yeah, I mean, I personally, I think I'm so far left that I'm not even left anymore. Like, because I think that's the thing about socialism is
for the listeners. By the way, for the listeners, Mort has a swastika tattoo on his forehead at the moment. So and look, I didn't graduate college. I know very little actually about socioeconomic theory or political theory of any kind. But I do believe that those entities are still capitalist. They're still money based. Capitalism is so profoundly has been interwoven in the way that we think that society and being a human exists, that those types of governance still exist based upon the exchanging of capital. Well, no, it's exchanging of money. And I'm not very good on Marxist theory. I've read parts of Capital. I had a shitty education that taught analytic philosophy as opposed to anything that was useful. And so I've had to piece together a lot of stuff on my own. And then asking my friends who did eventually get their PhDs, is this right? And they're like, I don't know. It's a lot of me asking my friends who are professors.
You knew PhDs. I was hanging out with like skateboarders and people that did improv. And so did you, of course. But
I had a skateboard. I had a skateboard. I got a skateboard for my mid-20s crisis.
Yeah, oh, that's a fun one. Interesting.
Yeah.
Not enough people don't talk about that enough, what theirs was. Yeah, mine was moving to Chicago. Yeah, it was a good one. Hell yeah.
We'll get back to this. And there's a Gen X thing I want to get back to, too. But as far as I understand, like, it's not that the idea isn't you're supposed to, like, you live in a utopia like heaven where, like, you know, you reach into a cloud and there's an orange there or something like that, right? The idea is you're still selling things, but the money goes to the people as opposed to this capitalist parasite that siphons off, like a landlord or a CEO or someone like that, or a quote unquote founder.
Yes,
as
but
the tech freaks call themselves.
Inevitably, what happens is that because it's still based on capital, the system gets taken over by a person who is exploiting the system for their own gain. So invariably, you still have a person who claims to be communist at the top who's actually kind of a dictator, right? I mean, we see that happen.
That's the whole idea, is that's supposed to be the commune.
But I think that it's still, until we get beyond trading an imaginary dirty paper for goods and services, that will always happen.
I don't think you'll ever get beyond some kind of trading, though, because, and this is like a David Harvey point.
But there's a difference between trading goods and services for an imaginary piece of paper
for filthy lucre.
An actual product or food or whatever it is.
I mean, I'm not up on any kind of monetary theory in terms of like what happens. I don't know what the ideas are of turning labor value or products of that labor into something tradable. I don't know I don't know how you do that or what you do with it. You can see in the way that I'm like carefully choosing my words and stuttering.
Well, I don't think we've figured it out yet.
Well, I know there are people. I know there are Marxist theorists or socialist theorists or communist theorists. I know there are people that have discussed this stuff. I'm just not well read enough to be able to say how that works. I don't know if the transmutation of labor into a thing that you can easily trade, like money, is the problem as much as it is the person who controls.
Most people don't think that it is. I think that it is. Because the person who controls that is going to come along.
Not if you guillotine them every time they try to do it. But then
what happens is then the people who did the guillotine all of a sudden have all the money in the world, and then they do the same fucking thing.
But the whole thing, I think the whole thing is supposed to be redistribution. That the whole problem is that the capitalist system does not redistribute the money to the workers and exploits the working class in order to create surplus value. Is that it? Again, we're now in shaky territory for me in terms of theory.
I'm not an academic. Like I just see this thing that to me it's very clear that my opinion is that any sort of delusion ultimately causes suffering. And human beings are so incredibly powerful that when we decide something is true, even if it's not, it sort of becomes true. That's what happens with money. It means nothing, and yet we all decide that it does, so it does. And that is a delusion that ultimately causes suffering. Now, people don't agree with me, but that's what I think.
Mort, is that you should do that in all arguments where like you're arguing with someone, you're like, hey, look, I'm just a skateboarder. Like you're a Southern lawyer in like a 1940s kind of thing. Like, but instead of like sticking your thumbs under your suspenders, you like flip the wheels on your deck, and you're like, "Look, I'm just a humble skateboarder.
Yeah, I'm just an urban teen with a latte and something to prove, rebelling against my dad." Yeah, I don't know. This is what I think.
Well, there's a lot here. First of all, I am interested in. I mean, it was very Buddhist of you what you said, where it seems like money stands in for desire being the root of evil in some way of the world.
Yeah, I generally don't believe in evil, but I believe a delusion.
Yeah. Well, that to me struck me as some, if not Buddhist adjacent thought.
Yeah. Sure. I like the Buddhists. I like them.
Sure. There was the rebelling against your dad. And then the thing I want to go back to first, though, because we'll get to the dad stuff, is earlier when you were talking about Gen X and this kind of like the ethos of selling out. I think there is something interesting in that, like Gen X, which I do not count myself as part of, but they have become some of the most hardcore liberal centrists, almost worse, if not worse, than boomers at this point. if you look at the demographics, like not all of them. But I think that is interesting that for a generation where the ethos was supposed to be, you don't sell out, they are now just like, look, genocide's not a red line for me. Like that kind of stuff.
Is that what they're saying? Yeah, I don't know. Like, okay, they shouldn't say that.
I'm telling you. Mort, believe me when I tell you that I've seen the polls. I've seen the polling.
I think the reason Gen X hasn't gotten basically every generation is despised by the other generation, which shows our like embarrassing level of immaturity as a culture. Starting with the boomers, because they're older, so they should have a certain level of wisdom to understand that kids are going to be rebellious. They act like children, right? But I think Gen X has generally avoided that because they, again, learn how to keep their head down and be ignored. But I like that you're trying to finally bring the fire to them. I think they're the only ones who've been sort of untouched by a general cultural scathing.
Now, fuck them. Fuck Gen X. Fuck Reality Bites. I don't want to watch that shit. But the thing that struck me from what we were saying before was I was watching this interview with Steve Malkmus, like after Pavement broke up and he was like on tour promoting his first solo album. And this is just generally, it seems like Steve Malkmus's thing, which was someone asked him a question and it was a pretty direct question and it was a shitty question. It wasn't like great, but like instead of answering it, he kind of like tried to like sidestep it and go around having to answer it. Could have been out of boredom, but it felt to me more like he was just avoiding having to be genuine in the moment, which feels like a very Gen X thing. And I don't know how much that affected you, the kind of sidestepping something. Like, I don't know what the connection is first between that, like, I don't want to sell out. Is it just oppositional defiant disorder kind of shit where it's just like, I don't want anyone telling me, like, sorry, now I'm imagining I'm in Greece for some reason, which takes place in the 1950s, if I remember correctly. Right? But, like, I'm imagining someone like, hey, ain't no one going to tell me what to do, like Fonzie or something like that. I don't like authority. Yeah. And then part of that is I don't like the authority of my own emotions. And so I'm going to avoid them in some way. And then you said, and I don't know how to connect all this stuff, but I think there's something there. You had said something about it being like a product of neglect. And I'm curious if that resonates with you personally.
Yeah, as far as my personal experience growing up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I experienced some neglect for sure. I mean, I think, my mom was a school teacher and my dad worked at restaurants and stuff. And I talk a little bit about it in my special, There's Beauty in It All, available on February 22nd on YouTube. Speaking of commodification.
Masterful, by the way, masterful
thanks.
Plug.
Good, that felt genuine. Good. Yeah, that felt seamless.
Integrated, like without anyone it may have been the most natural way I've ever heard anyone of inserting anything into a sentence.
Yeah, you know what's close to Nirvana is youtube.com. So, yeah, I think for me, I have had a fair amount of, I like this idea that cynicism is the tattered armor of the sensitive. And I have had a lot of them in my life, and I think a lot of my adulthood has been learning to try and genuinely express my emotions because it's important to be able to communicate them so that they can be processed. Because what happens when you deal with everything with cynicism, a refusal to treat anything with a certain level of honesty, earnestness. Mm-hmm. All the different feelings just get buried and usually turn into like a low boil of anger, which is kind of right,
sure.
which is sort of what you can see in people who. It's interesting because it's like the Gen X thing. I think it's not like our parents culturally were teaching us, oh, this is how you talk about your emotions, right? There's this thing called toxic masculinity. Under the threat of violence, you will feel as though it's necessary to avoid admitting any sort of vulnerable emotions. Nobody was telling Gen X that, right? So Gen X inherited the inability to talk about their emotions, but they knew that something was wrong, so they blamed it on their parents, but they didn't culturally get to the point of what's really wrong is that we're not talking about our feelings. That would come a little bit later. And you see the result of that, which is like an entire billion-dollar propaganda machine that is dedicated to talking about shit like, you know, Mr. Rogers was creepy. You know? And that's because that's what you run into when you start to move away from this patriarchal, toxic refusal to acknowledge that sometimes men feel loneliness, you know? So those are things that because of the way that I was raised, and again, there's nothing evil about my family. They're just like, we just come from dysfunction. You know what I mean? There's like alcoholism, there's like, you know, mental illness, all that shit, right? So that always just sort of complicates the ability to give and receive love in a simple way. And so I think that my job has been to try to learn how to be earnest. I've got this new stand-up special called There's Beauty in It All on February 22nd. Yeah. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think. Well, it's starting off on the climb, the mountain climb.
Yeah.
Of the quest. We've left base camp.
Okay, great.
This is a good metaphor, by the way.
Yeah, hell yeah. Have we seen a body yet on the mountain? I was
no, we're not high up enough. Okay. We're not high up. I'll let you know when there's a frozen body. By the way, this is our second dead body metaphor.
You get me together. You get me and Andy Beckerman together. It's gonna get dark quick.
But here's the thing. Okay, we're both silly billies, I think, right? Both silly billies trying in our adult lives to be emotionally open human beings, right? And I'm trying to figure out if the silliness. Look, it doesn't have to be that it's just like, oh, this was a response to whatever was going on. Like, I don't think I had I don't think there wasn't a ton of dysfunction in my family when I was growing up. There was just like two parents who worked. They loved us. We just never talked about emotions. That was the big thing.
Yeah. And my parents loved us too, you know. It's like, yeah, for sure.
No, just you. You were right the first time. Siblings, no, just you.
Yeah, they made it clear. We called it Mort Christmas. That's where everybody watched me open presents.
Mortmas?
Mortmas. Yep.
It was right
Santa
there.
Santa came from Mort this year.
Sorry, Crystalline. I don't know why I've created a sister for you named Crystalline.
You nailed it. That's her name. Sweet Crystalline.
But the silliness, look, I listened to Weird Al when I was a kid.
Right.
I was into They Might Be Giants, still am. There was a lot of...
I've been listening to have you heard The Communists Have the Music, that song?
No.
Oh, it's the banger, dude. You gotta listen to TMBG's The Communists Have the Music. I just found it. It's great.
I will.
Yeah, fucking hot dog. It's great. Timely.
But like, you know, whatever. Ren and Stimpy. All this stuff appealed to me. I don't think it was just like a response to... I don't think like if you don't know how to talk about your emotions, you become a silly Billy.
Yeah.
But
no, I think and I love silly and goofing around. No, I look at it this way. Certain things are like music is beautiful, laughter is beautiful, jokes are incredible, art is really great. So sometimes if you come from a place where you maybe have maybe a little more pain maybe than the average person, and there's a lot of people that have a lot of pain, so I'm not saying, you know what I mean, but I think you are more likely to become a little bit obsessed with this thing that can brighten a day that is otherwise challenging. And that, you know what I mean? And that doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with those things getting obsessed with it can be really powerful and beautiful, and it can make you a great appreciator of these things or a great practitioner of these things, you know? And then also it often does need to be balanced out sometimes later in life with like, okay, there's some stuff that I also haven't looked at. And my wife had this great therapist who said this thing of like, you get to keep the good stuff. Because I think when people, if you're going to get sober, you're afraid you're not going to be funny anymore. If you stop, if you start looking into your shit, I'm not going to be edgy anymore, all this stuff. But I think the reality is you've already developed these abilities. Those things don't go anywhere. You just, in an ideal world, get to have a little bit more room around and space around the stuff that you maybe hadn't looked at that's causing you pain, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It is interesting. It's just like one of many strategies to deal with I don't want to say it's not like it wasn't full, but a shadow of fullness.
Sure.
It's one of the many strategies that one can deal with when you don't have the full range of emotions when you are growing up. And also, I don't know about you, but like suburban boredom, like, you know, it's one of the many ways that you can deal with both of those things at once, which is I'm going to go into my imagination and I'm going to be very silly.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be a goof.
Yeah, it's great.
It's not a choice, but...
No, but it's cool. It's nice because it's helped me, those kinds of realities has helped me come around to really liking people, which has really been important for me because I used to fucking hate them.
Go on.
Well, again, I think that's that Gen X thing, that like cynicism of like everybody's fucking pretty stupid. All pop music is trash. There's just this sort of like tendency to, because you're insecure, like carry a lot of judgment as a protection thing. And so that the result of that is like, fuck my teachers, like, fuck, everybody's corny and lame. And so I really like appreciating the fact that I think that's very true. It's like a really beautiful part of humanity that we like have these imaginations, or that we get into, creating some manner of art. But
were you like that when you were a kid? Were you also cynical and like, fuck this? Because I wasn't like that. What age are we talking about? Because I went through phases, I think. Well, why don't we detail the phases? First, you're silly Billy. Is that the first phase?
Yeah, I was pretty funny in elementary school, and I would get in trouble a lot because I would kind of take over the class from the teacher. So I would
familiar.
Yeah, I would like make jokes and sort of like whatever, kind of take their authority from them a little bit, and then they'd have to punish me, right? Like I'd have to. And then the other thing I did was I had kids who I didn't like, and I was a bully to them. And then I had other kids, yeah, totally. And then I had other kids who were a little bit bullied who I did like, and I would stand up for them.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What made you bully? What were the people you bullied?
That's a good question. Oh, this is a crazy one. So, and I'll tell stories later that make me look like a saint so that we even things out. And this was really, so again, I didn't have any teachers who I felt like understood me, valued the things that I cared about. A lot of times they would, like they let me read Stephen King books in third grade because it would shut me up during like math class and stuff.
Which ones?
Dude, I read it. I don't think I read all. I know, gnarly. I don't think I read all of The Stand, but I read like 4 Seasons and all these. I just read a lot of Stephen King as a kid. But there was this one kid, I made fun of his clothes, and I remember my teacher, Mrs. Hodges, who I think was my third grade teacher, and this was great. She took me out of the room and she said, "Hey, he's poor. He has to wear those clothes." And it was the first time that she didn't say it to me in a shaming way. It was almost like there was a level of respect to it. Mm-hmm. That it really hit home, and I never made fun of that kid again. And again, it's not like we were rich, but we were able to get like, I don't know, an outfit or two for the year that was like new and that I liked or something, but he probably had to get secondhand thrift store clothes, and I was making fun of him for it. Now, I will say also that all right, we're going to get into it. So there's a psychological family dynamic called the scapegoat. Are you familiar with this?
I know what a scapegoat is, but not as a psychological term.
Yeah, so there's these different frameworks.
Hey, Mort, just so you know, I know what a scapegoat is.
So there's in family dynamics of certain levels of like dysfunctional families, there's the golden child, the forgotten child, and the scapegoat. And what it
sounds like a Jewish kind of like, at Passover, they ask the 4 questions, and then there's the four types of people, the wicked son, I forget exactly.
The scapegoat does have to wear a yarmulke. That's part of the thing. But there's like, but the scapegoat as an idea, I think, is from some, I don't know, Hebrew. I don't even know if it's a Bible story. I don't fucking know. But the idea, the old story is that, like, there's a goat who everybody puts all their blame onto and all their shit, and then they send it out to the forest, whatever, that whole thing. So, yeah, and that dysfunctional families operate in this way, that this dynamic takes place where one of the children is sort of subconsciously saddled with a bunch of like unprocessed grief and stuff, and then and that child's job is to really to receive blame for anything that the family is going through, so the family knows that it's okay, this is the problem. And they also
like on purpose, like they do it, or like the parents say this to the kid like overtly, or do you mean like the kid takes it on?
Both. And there's spectrums of it, right? So there's probably like an evil mommy and daddy version of the farthest end of the spectrum that would do something like that directly, and then there's the other version of, there's the other side of the spectrum where like maybe this is operating in a way that's not even really that damaging to anybody. It's just sort of like everybody's got some unprocessed shit. So maybe, but so I was kind of the scapegoat in my opinion. And so that means that I was acting out the family dysfunction, the anger, the fear, all this stuff in class, because I was looking to get attention in a lot of ways, because I didn't feel like I was receiving attention at home. Now, that's not the way that my family necessarily looks at it. They would say that I was the one who needed a lot of help. And because I was diagnosed with ADD at age 7, and I got detention all the time, and I did need a lot of help with my homework and shit like that. So what I think is interesting, too, is this idea that, and this is a spiritual thing, that like all realities can coexist, right? So I get to have my truth and they get to have theirs, and I still love them very much. Like, and I'm still in the process of like forgiving all this stuff, but that's my understanding of why I was operating in this way. Why I would like do these things in class. Why? Because because there was like tension and shit at the house. And again, it's not because they're evil. It's because like they also come from family dysfunction. Everybody's doing their best. I really believe that. But that's how I view and then the golden child's job is to show the family that they are healthy. So that's the child who's like tasked. They get really good grades. They often feel a little bit sort of ignored and put upon in an entirely different way. Makes sense? Yeah. It's kind of fascinating, right?
But where did your parents fall on this spectrum? Obviously you said they're not evil, but like were they overtly saying this stuff to you?
No.
Or was it something you put on yourself that you were kind of, or just like your antenna was up and you kind of like picked it up?
Well, it's this weird thing that I think it's communicated in families that's kind of like subconscious. And then I think certain kids take on these roles or because it's somehow suggested that this is the way that it has to be. And then there's also something about me that will take experiences and turn it into kind of like a sort of rebellious anger, right? So that's kind of what I was doing in elementary school. And then by the time I got to high school, I really started drinking probably when I was like 13. And my first drink...
Were your friends?
Yeah.
So it wasn't just you. It wasn't like, you go into your parents' liquor cabinet. It was everyone.
Yeah. Because my buddy Paul had a beard at 16 or even younger, so he was able to get booze. And I don't know, it was like, it was pre 9/11, so nobody gave a shit about anything. They were like, get in here and get this keg, you lunatics.
He has a baby face, but also a huge beard. I guess we'll give him a keg.
Yeah, somebody strapped a fake beard on this toddler. Let's get him some cigarettes. So, and I had my first drink at 8 years old. And then I didn't drink again until I was 13. And I think that entire time I was dry drunk too, which is kind of hilarious for like a little kid who really needs a whiskey sour, And so I think all of that combined, that by the time I got to high school, I was really pretty like shut down because I think I'd sort of fought as much as I could fight. And then at that point, it's sort of kind of the anger sort of turned inward. And that's when I started dealing with like a lot of maybe more shame and depression. In the same way that you kind of a standard teenage kid who's like all of a sudden kind of like grumpy and is like doesn't really know how to talk to people. It's not that uncommon. It's like there is something about puberty where you start feeling a deeper kind of pain. And I think I didn't know what to do with it really, so I just like started skateboarding and listening to rap and shit like that,
Well, this is the thing that I was talking about earlier, where it's like most people of our generation weren't taught, and like the older generations, and again, this is good. This is keep going backwards, but like you weren't taught to articulate your emotions.
No.
I think we were better off than Gen X and boomers and all that stuff in that we weren't explicitly told not to feel something, where I think they were. They like their parents were like old school, like kind of like children should be seen and not heard, and they shouldn't. They should just be these kind of like husks.
Yeah.
And keep it all down, right?
Yeah.
I think we were allowed to have emotions, but we weren't taught like which ones were which, and what to do with them and how to channel the energy and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think that a lot of this, I really believe that part of the patriarchy's job is to remove from men any sort of femininity, which includes any vulnerable emotions. So I think this, after a while, you don't have to tell people. It's sort of like in their bones. And then now I think people are coming around way, way more, and for the last like 20 years, and we see the blowback against this too, but have really been getting into this idea of like, yeah, this is insane. Like there's this fire inside you that needs to come out and be addressed. We're not going to pretend like this doesn't exist and just like go home and like hit our kids anymore or something and pretend like everything's fine outside of the home, which is very like 50s style. And I'll also say my childhood, all that shit, of course, also there was so much like fun and joy and laughter and love. I had amazing friends. My dad's so funny. My mom's very loving. It's like all that stuff is really true, and also all of those other things are true as well.
Yeah. Okay. So we're talking Missouri. Where is this? St. Louis? I forget.
Yeah, North County, St. Louis. Yeah,
St. Louis. So, what are you doing there? Are you hanging out with the shrouded stranger? What is that thing?
Wait! Oh, god damn it! The VP Fair.
The Veiled Prophet
Fair. Yeah, totally. No, but my dad worked for the Urban League, which is like a civil rights organization. So he told us all about that shit, that like weird history of racism when I was, I don't know, too young to understand.
Yeah.
So I knew all about that shit. So, what am I doing? I don't know. I'm skateboarding. I'm not doing great in school, and I'm I don't know, listening to De La Soul and They Might Be Giants.
Hey, that's a great combination. I find myself that it was lucky I stumbled upon the music I stumbled upon. That has been a lifelong obsession. That I don't know what I would have done if I hadn't found that.
Yeah. Well, I had this really great... So in high school, all of my friends were so super cool and funny, and our friend had a band, and they were kind of like... They loved Uncle Tupelo. So you know that? Yeah. So they had a real like alt country vibe, and then there was a lot of them who loved a lot of like whatever, the Who and like just British mod shit too. And then I really loved hip hop. And then I had one friend who was super into like the Ramones and punk, and we would go to their house. My buddy Mike's place, and his mom was a single mother and a nurse, so we had like full run of the house basically, and we would have like, we'd jump off the roof into the pool, we'd like drink downstairs, and the band would play. It was like this kind of like 90s Lord of the Flies kind of like utopia, just pastiche of hormones and anger and joy and like substance abuse. It was so fun.
Yeah. It was all the 90s films about suburban teens.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So wait, how do your parents end up in St. Louis?
They are, I mean, we're Irish and English, and they came through New York, and then they ended up in St. Louis.
Your grandparents?
No, my like great-great-grandparents, I think. And then they went through New York and lived there. That's where we think they got the name Mort, because they didn't realize it was a Jewish name, and they were just like, that's a nice name.
Oh.
So that's why it was from Manhattan or something.
Wait, why? Is that name passed down? Are you like a Mort Jr.?
Yeah, I have an Uncle Mort and a great Uncle Mort. And my great Uncle Mort was, is this right? Was a Jesuit priest.
Uh-huh.
And then my Uncle Mort, who's still alive, he's awesome. He's Catholic and also pretty like rock and roll. So there's like the Jesuits are like a progressive Catholic.
Yeah, the Barragans.
Right. I don't know who that is, but you know.
They're very well-known progressive anti-war
Yes.
Jesuits.
Those are my people. So like my grandpa walked with Martin Luther King on Selma. Like shit like that. So we there's like kind of like
Shit like that. You know, fucking whatever. They sat at
Fucking
counters
bullshit.
and protest, whatever.
you know, bullshit like stand in front of the tank with the flower or whatever.
Yeah.
That kind of trash, stupid trash. No, I really like it, but then it's also, you know, you don't want to be like, aren't we so great either? You know, it's like it's a fine line you're walking as a white when you talk about civil rights, because like, you know, how good of a job did we did? But some of my family was trying, and then my uncle Mort, he has like kind of a Lou Reed vibe, and he was in a really cool band in St. Louis called Diamond Stud, which is a fucking badass name for a rock band, and yeah, so that's the kind of like progressive arty side of the family, I would say.
Yeah. What about your cousin Shlomo, who is a cardinal in the Catholic Church?
Yeah, he's trying to change things up over there, you know.
So okay, so sometime in the late 1800s, come over here.
Well, yeah, when you say how did the family end up in St. Louis, like they'd been there for a couple of generations by the time I came around.
Right, but I'm just saying, like it's a while. It's not like my parents moved to Reading from New York. Like that was you know it wasn't like the Beckermans go back generations there. It was my great grandmother was there. They moved there to help care for her, and then they stayed there because they started a family and found jobs.
Yeah, my parents are from St. Louis City, and then they moved out to North County when they had kids.
What's the difference between what's North County? Is that just part of is that like the suburbs?
Yeah, it's like I would say like lower middle class suburbs.
Okay.
We're right next to so St. Louis is weird because it's like there are aspects of it that are like Detroit because it was like a formerly very affluent city that, you know, when people stopped using ships to transport goods, it became a problem because it was like a port city basically. So there's all these like beautiful brick houses that the backs are missing from, and they call them doll houses. So yeah, so there's this like. And then, you know, so it's not totally broken and economically disadvantaged, but there's certainly parts of it that are. And so St. Louis City is like the cooler city part that block to block is like really, really cool houses, some really amazing fucking Gothic architecture because St. Louis is one of the most Catholic places in the world. It has more archdioceses than anyone else. But those churches, they look like they're straight out of fucking Batman. Like they're like there's a darkness to them that's kind of sick. In fact, there was this really good Instagram account where they had put a skateboard ramp in one of these beautiful old abandoned churches that had like these giant stained glass windows, and they put a fucking. You should look that up. I forget what it was called, but that place burnt down, which is very St. Louis. St. Louis is really good at like almost creating a really cool scene. But then people have to move to really start something. And St. Louis doesn't claim our people like Chicago does, or these other places who are like, if you step through Chicago's like, he's ours, he belongs to us. But St. Louis is like, we're sorry we exist. We apologize for being here. Like, fucking Miles Davis is from East St. Louis, but like the whole city should be like, we're the home of Miles Davis. You know what I mean? But like I don't think we have enough confidence to claim people. So St. Louis is this thing where it's pretty hood, and then there'll be like a really nice neighborhood, and then it's pretty hood, and then there'll be a really nice neighborhood, and then all sort of different factions that so it can be a little bit block to block, and then like the west suburbs are more affluent. That's like what we would consider maybe rich, but it's not. It's nothing compared to like California rich. You know what I mean?
Right.
St. Louis rich is fucking desperately poor in Los Angeles, right?
I thought I knew what wealthy was until I moved to New York. And then you start to get a glimpse of what real wealth is.
Yeah.
You know, you go to someone's apartment and it's like there's only 2 apartments on that floor and it's the size of your house. Yeah. And you're like, oh.
And it's the most expensive real estate in the world. So they're like, yeah, but we're not have as much as the people that own the fucking Empire State Building. You're like that. Like we thought my cousins were rich because they had a trampoline, you know. But you get out here and it's like, oh, your son doesn't have a helicopter. That's sad.
Yeah, that's right. Or out here, yeah, exactly. Where you're just like you go to someone's like palatial mansion and they have a helicopter pad.
Yeah, dude. Whereas like in Vegas, you can get You can get a pretty sweet house for less than you would pay rent on like a 1-bedroom out here for sure. So, and then the North County where I'm from is like, again. So we're like this. So North County, it goes like this. I'm from Florissant. It goes Florissant, Ferguson, Florissant, Ferguson. You know what Ferguson? Do you remember what happened at Ferguson? Ferguson is the home of the Mike Brown protests, right?
Yes, I'm familiar.
Yeah. Some people forget that. So what happened there was that the Ferguson was being policed by all these people from the white part of Florissant, which again is not like super affluent. It was just like blue collar white cops coming through and psycho over policing this like poor neighborhood basically. So it was that powder keg that happened there. Mm-hmm. There's a reason that happened in St. Louis. So like I was really aware of from very early on, I was made aware of like to the best that they could, the racial reality in America. And then I saw it because I would see like deep, gnarly racism. I saw it all the time. You know, white kids using the hard RN on the bus and shit.
Oh, God.
Yeah, man. It's very, very real, you know? So, and I was sort of raised to be, again, my parents are super progressive. So I think I was taught about the climate crisis and systemic racism probably too young, I would say. So I had a lot of fear around that stuff for a really long time. And so now that this is like all of this is happening, right? I see it as, again, like an inevitable thing in America because of what America truly is. Like this darkness is not going to go away. It needs to be seen and addressed. And now it's at the point where I wrote a thing about this on my Substack where it's just like, it used to be blue collar parents blaming their neighbors who are people of color so that they don't have to feel afraid, right? Like I the reason I can't make ends meet, it's not because there's something wrong with the system. And so I don't have to be afraid of that. I don't have to be afraid of my inability to feed my family if I can hate my neighbor, right? That's an extremely seductive lie. And so I feel like I saw all of that as a young person, and not to victimize myself by it, because I also was like, I had my rights violated by cops because I skateboarded, right? But
I was going to ask that because that's the same thing that happened in Exeter, or the suburb where I grew up of Reading, was that the skateboarders and me, my friends and I, we were adjacent with this. We were friends with people who were skateboarding, and we were just kids that wanted to have fun. We didn't really drink. We didn't, we didn't do drugs, but what we did do was like play outside because we like to have fun. So we'd play tennis at night. No one else would be at the tennis courts. You could be. There wasn't anything against it, but the cops would be annoyed with us. It seemed like all of culture in the 90s was all of the authorities were basically like, we don't care what you do in your basement. Just go in your fucking basement. We don't want to see you in public.
Right. And isn't that amazing, the ability to like systemically destroy the idea of public space, to use like the academic term? It's like children want to be outside. That's the very nature of, like, if you think about kind of an indigenous group of people and the families that they have, all of the time is spent outside interacting with your neighbors and your like extended family. And then I think kids, again, Gen X, like, we knew something was wrong. And older millennials too. It's like, and that's the scapegoat. There's a scapegoat mentality to that too, of like, fuck that. Like, you think you don't understand how wrong what you're doing is. I don't give a shit if you have a gun. Like, I'm going to kind of get in your face and be like, what? If you're going to hurt anybody, hurt me, like, kind of a thing. Right.
Yeah.
But so the difference was that I could put down my skateboard and not experience that. So that's the difference between me and like the black kids that I would skate with.
Yeah, of course.
So,
of course.
Right.
I mean, that's the thing though. You're taught, like, I was taught about the Holocaust at a very early age. I was taught about injustice. I was taught about all of these things, not just like injustice against Jews in Nazi Germany, but against black people, against gay people. I was taught about this stuff at an early age, and it burned in me. And then once it started happening to me in terms of like interactions with the cops, and it was never anything bad for me. Like there was no violence, but it was just like, why are you I'm allowed to do this thing. Why are you telling me I can't do it? Mm-hmm. Just because you personally want things to be a certain way, and you want the public space to be as quiet as possible or whatever. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. That you are forcing this on me.
Yeah.
And so it's we don't have to be the victims of violence to recognize injustice. And then once it starts happening to you, be like, feel the same kind of feelings. Yes. Does that make sense?
Totally. Yeah. To me, I think that's a really like important experience to have had, because I know what that feels like. Because I think there's a ton of white people who truly have never been exposed to that, and it doesn't make sense. Like, cops just feel like protectors to them, but to me, they feel like bullies with guns.
Always. Even, again, I have had relatively benign encounters with cops for my entire life. I still shirk when I see one. And I've never done the worst thing I've ever done in my fucking life was steal a skee ball from Bolorama that sits in my childhood room on the shelf in my parents' house. I've never done anything with it. I thought I had this thing in my head where I'm like, ooh, wouldn't it be funny to drop it off of a overpass? And then 1 second after having that thought, I imagined it hitting a car. Which is, I was like, it would be crazy. Someone's in their car and then it lands on them. And I'm like, they crash and die. And I was like, this is a terrible idea. Do not do this. And it stayed it has never left the shelf on my parents' house since I stole it from Bolorama. This is the worst thing I've done.
And there's it'd be funny if you beeped all that out to protect yourself.
I believe, first of all, the Bolorama doesn't exist anymore. So I do not think that they could press charges. Second of all, I think the statute of limitations on a stolen, how much could that thing cost? Like $1, $2?
Yeah.
I think the statute of limitations and the cost of the skee ball.
You're in the clear. You feel
I think I can admit this on a podcast.
But you apparently had the developed brain that takes males longer to develop the ability to recognize consequences.
I could extrapolate from the consequences, like getting kicked out of class or having the teacher yell at me to stop making jokes, or I know what it feels like I made Frau Worley cry, our German teacher, cry. She was very permissive and she was very like open to being able to like goof around and do the things I wanted to do. And one time I took it too far and it made her cry and I felt like absolute shit. I know what consequences feel like. So I can extrapolate like, oh, if this made me feel bad, probably killing someone, even inadvertently, would probably not be a good thing. Even if like, let alone like making me feel bad, destroying someone else's life, not a good. If making someone cry is not a good thing, I would say destroying someone's life permanently is not a good thing.
Yeah, that's good extrapolation. Apparently,
Thank you.
I don't know if this is true anymore. The neuroscience around it, what I heard 10 years ago, is that whatever aspect of cognitive function in it that is takes longer to develop in males, which makes sense to me.
But it's not biological. It's just a cultural thing, right?
This thing said it was physiological, but who fucking that shit changes week to week anyway. With their understanding of the brain.
I don't trust sociobiology that much. I think a lot of it has been proven since the 70s to be pretty faulty.
Well, I'm saying like physiology. So supposedly they were saying it had whatever, the way the cortex develops in males or something is what I'd heard.
I'm not making it, but if I felt like it, I would be making the jerk off motion for that.
Yeah. But then we'd both get turned on, and then what happens to this podcast? Yeah. All right. So where do we go? Yeah, hit me. Too many dalliances.
So no. St. Louis. That's the last thread I remember. Skateboarding.
Yeah. And then I got a little bit older, and then I started working at this movie theater called the Tivoli on Del Mar, which is this really cool like palatial movie house that had been like they did a beautiful job building it back up to these beautiful movie house, and it showed like independent theaters. So then I like started hanging out. I got a girlfriend who was from South City, and, that's like all those kids were cooler. We met all the South City kids. They were like funnier, smarter, knew all like even more weird music. And And then at 23, I moved to Chicago.
What indie films are you seeing at this theater that are kind of piquing your interest?
What did I watch there? You know what the first thing that comes to... Oh, wait. There's a Russian movie called The Return. That is incredible. Like, the cinematography is really singular in it. It has this really beautiful sort of cold blueness to it. And it's about a dad who returns and like makes these two kids go on a road trip with him. It's it's called The Return. It had to have been like early 2000s, late 90s.
Yeah.
Independent Russian film. Yeah.
Is this stuff pushing you in a direction though? I guess is what I like. Indie film in the 90s really kind of started pushing me in this direction.
Yeah, I was already kind of pushing that direction because I worked at Blockbuster in high school, or right out of high school or something. And then I think I got a job at this movie theater at like probably 20 or something, 19 or 20. So what I heard, and my sister, like she, you know, we watched Raising Arizona when I was like probably 6th grade, and I was like, holy shit. And then she showed us Bottle Rocket, so I was already kind of on the Wes Anderson thing. And so I'd had like a nice introduction into that. My brother had a film degree too, so he was all into like Kurosawa and that kind of shit.
Okay. So yeah. There's stuff there, you know, there's a lot of media that's kind of like intriguing you.
Yeah, and it does have that thing of, wow, this is so different and bright or dark. But compared to everything else that's going on, yeah, this, you know, whoa, Blood Simple feels like a little bit how I feel inside sometimes. Fuck, that's cool that somebody's turning this, you know, making this noir about it.
So what are the earliest desires to make something?
I started drawing cartoons in like 1st or 2nd grade. I remember I wanted to rap when I was really little. My friend and I wanted to be a rapper. My friend and I remember we wrote raps and we made a beat to you. There's a Cypress Hill song called How I Could Just Kill a Man that has this really sick, gnarly like doo-wop sample. I remember we took that and tried to rap to it. That probably would have been like 5th grade or something like that. And then watching my friend's band play, it was just, again, we would like watch them practice, and then we would have like we'd have parties and they would play. That whole experience was just like, it was cool to see people doing things in front of other people. And in high school, I didn't ever see any live comedy until I was like 21 or something. And up to that point, I'd only seen my like shitty high school production of Guys and Dolls, and I was like, "This is crap."
That's my go-to. For whatever reason, in the 90s, every single high school did a version of Guys and Dolls.
So bizarre, and like I think if I would have seen, I don't know. Anyway, at some point a friend of mine who was cool and funny was doing a 1-act, and I tried out for it, and I got the role that was like the funnier role, so I like got some laughs, and that was extremely memorable for me. You know, I was like, oh shit, that's cool.
Do you think why our entire generation does character names that are like like Joey Toaster is because of Nathan Detroit?
It's gotta be. And honestly, pretty strong influence. I mean, Joey Toaster is funny to this day, and timelessly funny. So fucking thanks.
It's funny to have a normal name and a thing.
And a noun is so good. David Table.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fucking Richard Automobile. Yeah, it's great.
I have a character I'm working on for a thing, and the name is Lester Clamstrip.
Yeah. Excellent.
I love it.
Yeah, you better. Hey, what's up? My name is Mark Radio. All right. You're like, so good.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, sorry. So, okay. But like, is there a desire to do anything? Like you said, you know, the way you painted your childhood is like you got AD&D. Are you like one of the AD&D Advanced Dungeons and Dragons? Yeah. You were diagnosed with ADD. Are you the first generation that's like really Ritalin up?
I may have been patient 0. Well, this is the other interesting thing. My parents didn't want me to take Ritalin, which I'm grateful for. They were like, yeah, we're not going to do that. Now, I think there wasn't, you know, the school system was not made for me, right? It just was not made for somebody bouncing up. But to me, still, it seems insane to put a child in a chair for 6 hours. Like,
yeah.
their bodies are brand new. Like they're meant to just sprint back and forth and scream for like 6 hours, you know? It's like getting a new fucking automobile. You want to drive it. So
no. Park it in the garage and yell at it.
Let it stay beautiful and never experience life. Yeah. So, and then the skateboarding really took over everything. Like I played soccer and baseball and I really liked that. I really liked soccer, but I was never that great at it. And like, I was okay. I was always like, I'm more physically adept than I look. I look like I invented video games, but I'm all right physically. So soccer. We had.
You look like you're a guy that draws those chess diagrams and then talks about them online with people.
What a pointed, devastating insult! You look like Robert Crumb's nephew.
I just feel like you're like, oh yes, the deductor's gambit. It was very masterful in this last match.
But that's why I had that joke about being born relatively poor and looking like this. It's like the greatest. You should either be affluent and born into wealth and pale, or fucking blue collar and like strong and tan. You know. So. Yeah. But yeah, in playing soccer, there was a B team and an A team, and I really wanted to get on the A team, and I did get on like the better team, but I was like one of the lesser talented players on the really good team, right? So what I liked about skateboarding was that, first of all, it's like having a car. Like it represents freedom to children. I think that's like cannot be underexpressed, right? And it also is the perfect easel for art. Right, and nothing else is like that really. Where it shows like an infinite capacity and potential for creation. That's why like artists and musicians are often drawn to skateboarding. But so the other thing I liked about it was there was no coach, and I also could just try it on my own for as long as I wanted. So. First, I wanted to be a rapper. Then I'm really glad I let go of that real quick. And then I wanted to be a skateboarder, and I worked really, 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 really hard and sustained a ton of injuries to become like, pretty good. It was all right. The skateboarding, certainly not the best in St. Louis by any means, you know? And you got to be like, it's fucking... The likelihood of becoming a professional skateboarder is like the percentages are insanely small. I wasn't anywhere near good enough, but I'm grateful for that too, because it's also a terrible fucking career.
Yeah. But that's what you wanted to do? You're like, I want to do this.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I wanted to do. Yeah.
When does the dream die, or when do you recognize, oh, I'm just not going to be the person, I'm not going to be Tony Hawk or Bam Margera or whatever?
I think I'm still gonna make it.
So you haven't. So you knew you weren't the best in St. Louis, but you still have
definitely not.
But still, way better people in middle age, you still have dreams of being the best.
I'm gonna get the pro model. No, I don't know. I don't know that it ever died as much as it did. Gave way to other things. You know, I started doing improv and sketch when I was like 21, and that just became the focus. You know.
You said you moved to Chicago at 23.
Yeah. So what happened was my sister lived in Missoula, Montana. She moved there with her now husband. And I went there for 3 summers in a row to Missoula. And she took me to like a short form improv show at a bar that happened to be really good. Like there was this group of people. There was like a lineage to this improv group. And I'd never seen it before. And that was the first time I'd seen comedy. So then I was like, oh my God. I couldn't believe how there was a guy who really reminded me of Chris Elliott. I always really, really loved Chris Elliott. And this dude he had like kind of a similar vibe. And there was a woman in there who was super funny. And she did this, like, I remember this bit she did. This is such a fascinating phenomenon. She did a character who was like a slam poet. And I knew it was super funny, even though I didn't really know slam poetry. It's like how the Simpsons will reference somebody and you just, don't know who that person is, but you're like, I just know that's the perfect choice of the person to reference, you know?
Yep.
It's like the confidence of that. So that's this really cool phenomenon of like, this is so fucking funny. I've never seen anything like it. It's right here. I don't even know why it's funny necessarily. Some of it I do, but other aspects of it, because it's really smart, evoke an entire world that I don't know anything about, you know? And so then I got back home to St. Louis and then found out there was an improv club called City Improv at Union Station in St. Louis, which is this really beautiful structure that was a locomotive station when St. Louis was like a thriving city that had been turned into like a pretty shitty mall. So at 21, I started taking classes there, and this guy, Ryan Lee, and this guy, Ben Swoboda, who were like teaching classes. I think it was Ryan Lee. This dude said to me, he's like, this is like a fish to water for you. And no one had ever said anything like that to me before.
Huh.
That like, you're really good at this thing. And I felt like I was, so it was just incredibly meaningful to me. And so then I got on, you auditioned, I got on one of the cast or whatever, and then we started doing short form shows for like Mall Walkers, which is pretty funny. And then I got into a sketch group, and we would do like sketch shows every couple of months, and that sort of grew in popularity after a while, and that was my like St. Louis comedy stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Was there any indication from your parents that they wanted you to do something, period?
They forced me to get a job out of high school. That's why I ended up working at Blockbuster.
But there was never any discussion like you're going to college. That was never like even like a thought.
No, I don't think they, again, it was very clear that academia wasn't for me, despite my relative intelligence. And I don't think they knew what to do about that. Like, what do you do with that kid? Do you go like, maybe you'll make it in Hollywood, buddy? We don't have any contacts. Good luck, you know? Yeah, so no, there was kind of never any really discussion about what I was going to do.
Okay.
How's that strike you, Andy?
I'm actually not sure I'm not sure how to wrestle with it because like my parents, it was almost like, yeah, you're going to college. Like there was no other discussion about it. You're going to college. It's obvious.
Yeah, for me, it was like, put your head down. Just try to make it through high school, man. Just try to get through high school.
Yeah, but then there's like another 60 some odd years to deal with.
That's a real wait and see, I guess, for the Burkes. I don't know.
Do you think...
to be fair, a high school degree, a college degree, I'm really glad I didn't have one. I'm grateful I didn't go $100,000 in debt when I was 18. That's fucking insane. Because I knew I was like, there's nothing I want to study that I want to go in debt that badly for. Nothing.
Yeah. No. I'm not like pro college or pro whatever.
Yeah.
I'm just like, for me, it was almost just obvious that that's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
To the point where I couldn't conceive of any other pathway. And to find that pathway was like a decade-long search.
Well, yeah, what was sort of interesting is that my dad is like probably the most well-read person I've ever met, and he doesn't have a college degree. So there might have been a certain thing of like, just if you want to study anything, kind of do it on your own.
Yeah.
And whatever
sure.
it was is the lack of pressure to go to college, although I do feel like it probably contributed to my always my whole life feeling like I was born into an existential crisis, you know? I think that it at least did sort of leave me pretty free, open rein to do whatever seemed interesting to me.
So is that what was going on then? If something was interesting to you, you just kind of gravitated towards it?
Yeah, and I got very serious about it. So... yeah, skateboarding and comedy, I just sort of was like, okay, in fact, with comedy, I've done this insane thing where I learned no other skills because I didn't want to have a backup plan, which is pretty wild because now I'm 46 and I'm putting out a very strong stand-up special called There Will Be Filthy on February 22nd, independently produced and directed.
Is there, again, seamless. Because I guess the thing that I'm like curious about is, were there any indications of like what you should do? Or were you really just allowed to, and it doesn't even have to be from your parents, from society, from friends or whatever, like, oh, maybe I should try this out. Or you were really just allowed, like, here, do it, whatever you feel like, follow it out.
My cousin Chris Holmes, when I was 13, we were hanging out at like a public pool, and I was doing this character called, it was like what we're talking about, it was like, I don't know, fucking Jason Spaceship, 1920s Coney Island swimmer. And I would like, and I would describe him as having one of those like singlet swimwear with the stripes. And like, and I'll do it on camera, but like he would always do this dive where he walked really silly to the end of the pool and then went like this. It was a really silly physical thing and like dove in, and he was a Coney Island swimmer. And my cousin was like, you should do comedy. You should be a comedian. And I was probably 13. And that was the first time that somebody suggested that it might be possible.
And you knew it was a job.
I guess so, but I wasn't thinking in terms. It's weird. I wasn't thinking in terms of like, okay, I'll feed a family with that or something. It just was like, I might have been pretty immature in a way. I'm sure I was, but some way of thinking, okay, that's something I can do. I must have like back pocketed it or something.
Was there any thought that you would have a family? Like, I asked that just because, like, again, there are these certain things my parents never, like, said this is what's happening. But it was just, like, assumed in my brain that I would, do what they did.
Yeah. Yeah. No, my brother and sister have families, so that's something that they seem to want. But I never was like, never had the thought of what it would be like to be a papa. It doesn't really, I mean.
But just like, hey, I'm supposed to have, but I guess what I'm trying to get at,
there was never any pressure on me, and I think if there would have been, my brother and sister took care of that. Because my brother's got kids, my parents get to be grandparents in St. Louis, they love it.
Yeah. I guess the thing that I'm really trying to figure out is just like, it was like almost like they you were a wind-up toy. They just wound it up and just put you down, and they're just like, all right, go. They didn't like if the wind-up toy got close to the edge of the table, they didn't like stop it from going off.
I did have a lot of head injuries as a kid.
But you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? There was no, there was a ton of non-verbal kinds of arrows pushing me in a certain direction. And then when I actually looked into what was in my heart, I realized all those arrows were pushing me away from what I actually wanted. And it took a long time for me to course correct. But for you, it was just like, this arrow's pointing right out of my heart. Yes, I'm going to follow that.
Yeah, for me, what it always felt like was like, okay, you have a really hard time in school. You're getting in trouble a lot. This is a huge burden on the entire family. We're going to sit down and like try to help you with your homework. They got me like a math tutor in high school, just like trying to get me to get enough credits so I would graduate high school. And yeah, that was kind of as far as it went.
Yeah, okay. So it was more born, like, do you think it was born out of the ADD?
Was what born out of the ADD?
I guess what I'm trying to figure out is like, what protected you? What stopped you from leaning into like these other things that like a lot of other people who probably like had the same kind of home life as you did or had the same kind of brain structure as you did. They went and they got a job working, as a manager at Chipotle or in the corporate offices of Olive Garden or whatever, right? I'm just trying to think of like, what protected you where you're just like, and they have a family and they have kids and maybe they don't want it or they don't know what they want or whatever, but they just did this thing. What protected you and allowed you to kind of follow what you felt like doing in your heart?
I have a really strong spirit. I don't like, first of all, my total inability to work an office job.
I guess that's what I'm trying to say is like, there were attempts and they just all were bad. Like they ended badly or they didn't work right.
I've never had a job that I didn't deeply, deeply despise. And I might need to be getting a job at a shoe store pretty soon. So go ahead and check out There's Beauty in It All February 27th because your boy needs some fucking scratch. But so I think I could do a lot better now, actually, if I needed to get some sort of job. But because there's a level of hubris in my inability to be like, I'm not gonna fucking take any more quote unquote guidance from this cokehead manager at this 24-year-old cokehead at this pizza delivery place that I work at. Like I've done a bunch of those jobs. I've worked at restaurants. I worked at a video store that sold pornography. I worked at movie theaters. I worked at Moats to Go over here in Los Angeles, $30 pizzas. I've done all that kind of like Bubba work shit. And at no point was anybody like, hey, we feel like there's some good upper mobility here for you. You know what I mean? Nobody was like, I didn't fail upwards, shockingly, as often, as common as that is. So I worked I randomly worked at a corporate law firm in Chicago for like 2 years. And it was insane. I mean, I was like a burgeoning alcoholic. I was doing a bunch of pills. The vibes felt terrible. It just wasn't for me. Like very clearly wasn't for me. I mean, there's been, that's sort of been like into adulthood is learning how I can feel more at peace and at home in my own skin. You know? So there wasn't a lot of hope in my heart for I will get the job that will make me feel comfortable because I'll be stable and supporting a family. Like, that didn't feel to me like that would make being alive feel okay.
Yeah. But wait, okay, sorry. We're right at the end, but I am still interested in figuring this out. You said you didn't feel comfortable in your own skin, or that was the goal eventually in your adult. I don't know if that's like something that you came to like in getting sober and that kind of stuff, or if it was something that you acknowledged in yourself earlier than that. But like you were on the path of what you wanted to do in life, but at the same time you didn't feel comfortable in your own skin, and that seems like an interesting contradiction. I'm curious how that worked in you.
I think you hear that a lot, like you know, Kurt Cobain said that thing of like, I'm waiting for the aliens to come down and get me. Like, I don't feel like I belong here. So if you don't feel like you belong here, I always kind of feel like with comedy, people will be like, you know, the people who haven't done it will be like, that it seems really challenging. And you're like, yes, it is, but everything seems challenging. So why not do the thing where the risk reward seems at least higher? Mm-hmm. You know? Does that make sense? Like, I already kind of feel not great. And again, I want to say this because I'm not trying to be like seem like my story is like a victim story. It's really not. I'm so proud and grateful for like where my life is today, truly. And it's taken a lot of work to get there. I've had to learn how to practice optimism because I think for so long I was, you know, dealing with depression, substance abuse problems, all that stuff. And the thing about those things is that they're a tool for a while, right? So like drinking worked for me for a long time. Like I could use the alcohol to not feel as bad after a show, you know, for a while, or have the courage to help me to move to Chicago and live on a friend's floor until I could finally get a place of my own, and then not move back to St. Louis, you know, even though things got really like thin there for a really long time and all those things. It's like, you know, I think there's innate intelligence to human beings, and I think we find what works for us. And if you're the kind of person who doesn't feel like you belong in the society that you're living in, you know, booze and drugs are a pretty good one for a while. But the unfortunate thing is there's a lot of people who go that route and never recover from it. But those, in my opinion, are very, very deeply sensitive people who oftentimes a lot of those people are probably great artists who we've lost. You know, they didn't get to be like the Nina Simone, but that doesn't mean that they didn't have that within them.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, I think about people a lot. You know, if I'm writing a script or something like that, I'm trying to figure out a character. I think of them as a series of faders on a mixing board, and their, you know, sensitivity is one of them. And then how do you react to, you know, where is it? And then those things change over time. And I think that's the metaphor works for an actual human being as opposed to a fictional human being.
Yeah, and it changes over time. That's like their character arc.
Yeah, or just the faders move up and down. Your sensitivity moves up and down. You know what you're sensitive to. And I think about like the kinds of, you know, if someone is very sensitive, how do you react to not to like go back to the beginning, but how do you react to a harsh world like the one we live in that does not value art in any way other than as a commodity? And obviously individual people or groups of people value art for what it makes them feel or for the meaning they find in it, or just because it's cool to look at or whatever, right? But as a society, that stuff isn't valued. And you know that you either know it instinctually when you see how people talk about things, how instead of talking about whether this movie is good or bad, most people end up talking about the box office.
Yeah.
Right? That kind of stuff. So you do internalize the harshness and the moral bankruptcy of the world we live in, and then you deal with it in different ways. Either you either you figure out some way to slough it off or to have a thicker skin, or you build up a wall to it, and then that's got its own problems. You, like you said, you know, you have substance abuse. Not you personally, I mean, you did, but like, you know, one can have substance abuse issues to just kind of like completely take themselves out of it.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't know for a long time that people, like your average person, perhaps didn't value art in the way that I did. But I think that there's this really deep thing I'm working on, which is, it's so simple, it's hard not to talk about it in cliche terms, but just how do you listen to your own internal compass, the like still quiet voice that says, this matters to me, and that's okay. And then try to, you know, and then of course you live in an actual 3-dimensional world, so you have to figure out how to get the bills paid and all that stuff, but to not let that overwhelm that voice. You know, when my beautiful special, There's Beauty in It All, comes out February 22nd on YouTube, just Google Mort Burke, There's Beauty in It All. I really am, it's a beautiful thing that I've made to me. And I realize that, you know, I want it to get 1 million views, right? But that is like having a child and then telling that child they need to be a doctor. Maybe that child doesn't want to be a doctor. Maybe that child is not meant to be a doctor. But what I want for this is for it to be seen by anyone who it would be meaningful for.
Yeah.
And that lasts within me, that feeling, desire, creation, the art lasts, in my opinion, in a way that the money does not.
You know, you saying that, it makes me think that whatever that voice is inside you is still a product of the world we live in. Like, it's inescapable, right? We're all products, even if we're trying to escape from just base corruption of the world that we live in, where, you know, it's been revealed in the last year that almost everyone in the ruling class is either some kind of pedophile or someone who is okay doing business with a pedophile. Mm-hmm. And you're just like, oh, like I knew things were bad. I didn't realize.
Right. Even Andy Beckerman didn't quite understand the level of depravity. Yeah. Depravity. Yeah, totally.
100%. Where I was like, yeah, I think I have a good grasp on how the ruling class works. I've read enough over the last 20 years. I know I may not have Marxist theory down as is evidenced by my inability to say much more than a couple buzzwords taken from Capital. But I thought I had at least a grasp on the composition of the ruling class and how the different classes interact globally and all that kind of stuff. And then
you didn't think they were committing child abduction on private jets to rape them.
I thought that there obviously was there was obviously sex trafficking and pedophilia and all of the things that have been revealed to be endemic to the ruling class. I thought those things were.
You didn't think it was Deepak Chopra and Steve Bannon together.
Yeah, I didn't think Noam Chomsky would immolate his entire legacy. Thank you, because he was a professor at MIT and Epstein dug his claws like that. The corruption was so perverse and extensive.
What I think that shows is how afraid everyone is. That everyone is so terrified that they're going to be out on the streets that they will even absolutely set up ranks with the devil himself. So I'll say this. This is where you and I differ maybe a little bit. You know, I'm a spiritual person, so I believe that yes, I am both. I am of this world and not of this world. And there's long histories of various kinds of spiritual tenets and belief systems that point to this. There's a very deep reality that is beyond our ability to see, taste, touch, feel, and that there's this mystery that exists between how that aspect of reality enters this world. And that still small voice is the aspect of our deep innate spirit, soul, personhood, infinite God love that exists within all of us, that if you spend enough time with yourself, that you allow all the fear and anger to dissipate, the lake becomes tranquil and you can have access to it at a deeper level. And that will tell you what you really, really are here for.
Okay. So yeah, that's what I was going to ask was, well, how do you, even though this voice inside for me is a complete product of the world we live in, the lifelong goal is to try to figure out how to either mutate that voice or protect the good part of it or whatever, right? I don't know how to exactly say it. But for you, there's almost this, I don't want to say like timeless, but non-corporeal part.
Yeah. I think timeless is good. I like timeless, yeah.
That exists outside of the debased world that we live in, that you are trying to get in touch with. And that's what you are attempting to do.
Yeah. To me, when I do that, I get less sick. So that's why I know that it works for me. So that's how I ascribe to it a deeper level of truth, because there's something about me that if I don't make some kind of clumsy attempt to have contact with that, I get all fucked up. I get like, I get suicidal and shit, or I get addicted to pills or whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Mort, that seems like a very nice place to end. Getting in touch with the timeless voice inside of you.
Yeah.
I wish I want that. I wish I could believe in it.
Well, what's interesting is you don't have to believe in it. You just have to try it and see if it works. Because I'm the same way. I mean, I cannot. The idea of blind faith to me is something that I've never been able to manufacture.
Yeah.
But through practice and just trying to like listen to stuff and take what I can use and leave the rest, and trying a little bit of meditation and trying a little bit of fucking yoga and trying a little bit, here and there, whatever. The more I do that stuff, the better I feel. So it's in the seeking.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining me. Give Crystalline my best.
Yeah, she's not doing good.
And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye, oh bye, oh bye, oh bye, oh bye, oh bye.